first letter of our alphabet, A, originates from the Egyptian pictogram of a bull's head. This animal, in being represented into the first letter of our alphabet, is not a mere coincidence, nor a mistake. No other animal has held as much importance to humans throughout history as bulls and cows have. And the Hebrew letter Aleph, which literally translates to ox, represents the beginning and the oneness and closeness with God in Rabbinic Judaism. Notoriously, cows are very holy to the Hindus, but they are not the only ones to regard them as such. Bulls and oxen are also the sacred animals of some of the most important gods which civilizations preached for millennia, such as Zeus, Enlil, El, Baal, Marduk, and many others, including the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh. But why? How did these animals become the most sacred animals of the gods? When humans lived in the most primitive conditions, our ancestors went on hunting expeditions, and one of the most hunted animals was the aurochs, as depicted in numerous cave paintings, an extinct cattle species, considered to be the wild ancestor of modern domestic cattle. The aurochs, with their robust physique, powerful horns, and dominant presence, stood out, even within the animal kingdom. Their muscular build, coupled with the way they puffed and snorted, particularly when agitated, conveyed a sense of raw power. Such a powerful herbivore would have been immensely valuable under human control if given the right conditions. And these conditions were met with the invention of agriculture. In its early stages, agriculture was inefficient and required a significant amount of manpower and muscle strength, especially in the process of plowing, where the upper layer of the soil is turned over to bring fresh nutrients to the surface from the bottom, while weeds and the remains of previous crops get buried to serve as fertilizer. Therefore, over the millennia, our ancestors managed to tame and transform these large herbivores into biological tractors, cooperating mutually to produce food together. Humans cultivated food, and cattle consumed a share of it. Having fat cows was synonymous with high land productivity, and having many cows was the highest form of wealth and pride of a successful farmer. Cattle not only produced milk, meat, and leather, but were the most valuable asset farmers could exchange for other products, services, and compensations, effectively transforming cows into one of the first forms of currency. For the largest amount of our history, cow bartering was the foundation of our economies, and dowries during marriages, for example, involved families donating part of their cows to each other to offer a starting point to the emerging couples. Furthermore, the farmer with the strongest bull was often paid by the villagers to impregnate their cows for better genetics. Without these big herbivores taking on some of our farming duties, it is fair to say that civilizations would have had a harder time starting off, and where cattle were geographically uncommon, humans had a harder time scaling their food production, leading to few villages being built and even fewer cities being erected. Our ancestors were obviously extremely aware of how fundamental cows were to their existence and the foundation of their civilization. They paid huge respect to these animals, raising them to the status of holy, making them a part of their religions. In Zoroastrianism, the primeval cow Gavaevo Data was killed, and from its various parts, plants and animals were created. In Norse mythology, the primeval cow Auzumbla was said to be one of the first beings to emerge in the universe, and from her udders flowed 4 rivers of milk which nourished the giants. In Egyptian mythology, the main deity Amun-Ra was said to have emerged from the cosmic cow goddess Hathor. Meanwhile, the sacred bull Apis, her son, was venerated as a deity in Memphis. This living bull was later mummified upon its death, receiving respect akin to that given to the pharaoh. Subsequently, a new bull would inherit its title. Cows were therefore associated with prosperity due to their accomplishments in farming. In Hindu mythology, Kamadhenu, the goddess of the cows, granted all wishes to whoever owned her. Our ancestors viewed these animals as so fundamental that in the night sky, the Taurus constellation was one of the first constellations to be drawn, likely what the Sumerians called the Bull of Heavens, while the constellation of Boötes represents the Sumerian god Enlil, guiding the oxen cart in the universe, granting prosperity to the farmers in the fields. Bulls, due to their reproductive role in cattle stocks, were also symbols of virility and manhood, for their aggressiveness and power to multiply cows for their owners. In fact, as many of you may remember, when Zeus in Greek mythology abducted Europa, He did it by transforming himself into a bull to attract her attention. And it is not a coincidence that the bull is linked to Zeus, a lightning and thunderstorm god, because bulls, while they run, make the land metaphorically tremble, causing earthquakes, just as thunderstorm gods such as Zeus make the earth and mountains quake when they thunder in the sky. And similarly to Zeus, almost every primary deity, which happened to be the thunderstorm gods in most mythologies, happened to have the bull as their sacred animal. Other thunderstorm deities include Marduk, nicknamed Calf of the Sun, Baal-Hadad, nicknamed Great Radiant Bull, Enlil, the Wild Bull, and El Elyon, the highest god of the Canaanite pantheon, also known as the Bull God, who had a son named Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament in the Tanakh, in Christianity, and referred to as Allah in Islam. Before Yahweh became the one and only God of Israel, absorbing El and his 69 other Canaanite brothers, including Baal, both El and Baal, as well as Yahweh, were depicted in the same manner, associated with a bull, like the Apis bull of the Egyptians. But this process of absorption led to confusion, and when Yahweh became the one and only God of Israel, representations of him as a bull were no longer allowed because they were also synonymous with his brother Baal, with his father El Elyon, and many other ancient Near East deities. One famous story in the Bible is the story of the golden calf, in which humans, by preaching a calf, almost risked being killed by Yahweh for this idolatrous representation. In religious ceremonies, the highest asset one could sacrifice was a bull. Sacrificing a bull was the most expensive thing that a farmer could lose, and sacrificing a bull to eat it was the utmost luxury a farmer could afford. The long-term economic loss of slaughtering a bull was unimaginable to our ancestors. To attract the attention of the gods, they would burn the fat of these bulls. Burning fat is considered sacred in almost every religion on the planet for this reason, and also because of its aromatic scent. It was also very common for gods to be portrayed with headdresses and hats made of bull horns. Enlil, Marduk, Baal, and most ancient Near East deities, including Egyptian deities, used to wear bull-horned hats to display their power. And kings also adopted these types of crowns to make themselves perceived as closer to such gods. The upward-pointing arches on crowns not only symbolize the rays of the sun, connecting the monarch to the divine, but may also have evolved from these bull-horned hats. In its earliest forms, this tradition may trace back to primitive people who wore the horns of the animals they hunted, like this cave painting representing a shaman wearing deer antlers. When it comes to sports, during the Bronze Age on the island of Crete, the Cretans practiced a discipline called taurokathapsia. In this sport, athletes grabbed the incoming bull by the horns and used the animal's energy of raising its head to perform acrobatic movements. In India, there's a sport called Jallikattu, where participants try to grab the large hump on the bull's back with both arms and hold on until the bull stops moving. In Spain, the tradition of the running of the bulls in Pamplona is celebrated, while the corrida, although popular in Spain, has also spread to Latin America, the south of France, and Portugal. In the United States, furthermore, bull riding is practiced as a segment of rodeo disciplines. But how did we come to forget the sacredness of these respectable animals after over 12,000 years of mutual cooperation in the fields? The importance and sacredness of bulls has changed drastically throughout history. The most tragic downfall to its holiness was marked by the Industrial Revolution, during which tractors and specialized machinery and fertilizers were invented, quickly replacing the need of oxen with more powerful and economically productive machinery. The value of bulls decreased significantly, as their strength on the fields was no longer needed. In contrast, the value of cows increased markedly due to a surge in milk and beef demand. The significance of cows in Hinduism continues today, especially given the extensive traditional farming in India that industrial farming hasn't yet replaced. The bull's fierce and untamed power persists today as a symbol of growth and prosperity, especially in the financial sector, as evidenced by the charging bull statue in front of the New York Stock Exchange. In the financial sector, a bullish trend refers to a stock rising more than 20%, while the bull market denotes an entire market growing by over 20%, driven by optimism, confidence, and a positive economic outlook. However, excessive optimism often leads to financial bubbles, and when these bubbles burst, they give way to bear market, which symbolizes price drops of more than 20% in general stock prices. The origins of the terms bullish and bearish might stem from the attacking behaviors of the two animals. A bull thrusts upward with its horns, symbolizing an upward market trend, whereas a bear swipes downward with its paws, indicating a downward market trend. In the corporate world, several companies, including Lamborghini, Red Bull, Merrill, and many others, incorporated bulls into their logos to symbolize their longevity, timelessness, and adherence to age-old traditions that sustain their existence through consistent practices. The bull's aggressive behavior, particularly when provoked, can denote a brand's desire to be at the forefront, always ready to charge ahead of competitors. Did you find this video informative? If so, here are some additional videos about the origins of the gods, their tales and religions you won't want to miss. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.